Social epistasis is a phenomenon in genetics where genes present in one individual affect the way in which behaviors develop in other individuals. So epistasis is a term which describes the tendency of a gene in one part of a genome to influence through its gene products the level of expression of another gene in another part of the genome. So a good example of this is actually from Gregor Mendel's work. He was the first person to notice this, and he found that there were certain alleles which had to be co-inherited in plants in order to produce plants which had white flowers versus purple flowers. It wasn't enough to have the P allele for purple flower coloration. There had to be another allele co-inherited with the P allele in order to express the purple allele. And that interaction between those alleles is called an epistasis. So then, what do we mean by social epistasis? Well, social epistasis is extending this tendency for genes to engage in this crosstalk within an organism to genes located in different organisms. And it turns out that, yes, a lot of the way in which you develop is under genetic control. We've known this for years because a lot of these sources of individual differences like intelligence and personality are heritable. But it turns out that for some of these traits, particularly these behavioral traits, some of that heritability is not heritability that exists in the variability among individuals. It's heritability which exists in the broader pattern of genetic interactions which take place among individuals or between individuals. So at its most simple level, a social epistatic transaction occurs when an individual has a particular gene, and via an interaction with a social partner, they can change the patterns of gene expression in their social partner in ways which have very far-reaching consequences for the fitness of the social partners, because the fitness of the social partners is now not necessarily purely a function of their own endogenous genetic variation, but also due to this added layer of genetic interactions that take place between individuals. So that is social epistasis. The term was coined in 2007 by an entomologist called Linksfair in relation to understanding how different castes, feeder castes, worker castes, how the feeder castes and ant colonies can actually steer the development of workers in different directions by different sort of allocations of food to them. And this process is a kind of gene-gene interaction which triggers different developmental trajectories among the worker ants. Quick question, are humans, compared to more primitive animals, more strongly influenced by our environment? Well, it depends what you mean by environment, because one of the things that people who are studying social epistasis and more broadly indirect genetic effects, which is the broader class of effects under which social epistasis is subsumed, what people are starting to learn is that a lot of what we consider to be environmentality, and some of what we even consider to be heritability, is in fact this indirect genetic effect. So what it suggests is that the social environment is more than just an environment. It's like an extended genotype. So an individual organism is embedded within this extended genotype, and as they develop, they interact with their social partners in this social genotype. And depending on how they interact with those social partners and the genetic variants, they may come into contact with other members of their extended phenotype. Those determine a certain percentage of the variability in terms of how these individuals interact with each other and how these individuals actually develop. So this gets us away from this false dichotomy between genes and environment. So now that we know that social epistasis is a real thing and that's actually part of the development of social species, we can also posit the existence of a novel mechanism through which these social epistatic transactions pathways give rise to significant degree of vulnerability. They confer significant vulnerability to population, because mutations which exist within individuals are often thought to affect the fitness of the individuals that they carry, and only the fitness of the individuals that carry them. But now we realize it's possible for one epistatic mutation in a single individual to harm a whole population.